What is up everyone, Talon here and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a very niche and very obscure airsoft replica that I'm willing to bet not a whole lot of you have ever heard. And if you have heard of it, I'm willing to bet you don't actually know where it's derived from. And this is actually the Australian service weapon, the Lithgow Arms F90 from KWA, a gas blowback, and we're going to get into it.
Traveling in a freighter combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady, she made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. She said, do you come from a land down under, where women glow and men wonder? Can't you hear the thunder? Let it run, let it take cover.
So what we have here in front of us is the licensed Lithgow Arms F90 from KWA. This is in a gas blowback configuration, which means the magazine is currently what holds the gas reservoir, the green gas or the gas propellant. The charging handle, as well as the imitation bolt sitting right back here, are going to operate mechanically very similar to a real rifle. This is awesome if you're trying to use airsoft as a bridge of training for a real firearm, or if you just want a lot of really cool action or immersion in with your airsoft gameplay. Now the F90 historically and quite iconically is in a bullpup configuration. When it comes to bullpups, the biggest benefit of having your magazine sit behind your trigger is you can get away with hiding a lot more barrel length in order to maximize your projectile efficiency and make the overall system more maneuverable and handle a little bit better compared to maybe a traditional AR platform, which I have down here that I'll bring up in as a demonstration in a couple minutes. So first of all, a huge shout out to KWA USA for giving me this as well as a couple other replicas in order to spend some time on and spend some time in order to get some of the workings figured out. I really appreciate them. I've had my hands on this model in particular for probably way longer than they might be comfortable with me borrowing, and thus I have to give them a huge shout out, huge thank you to KWA in order to give this to me. So if you guys do have any interest in picking up an airsoft replica, either a gas blowback or a battery powered system, or even they're getting into more immersion training, utilizing again airsoft as that bridge for training into the real firearms, I have used their gas blowbacks extensively, both for me independently as well as working side by side with law enforcement in order to do a lot of training scenarios and environments in order to help again use airsoft as that bridge into the real world. And it's been super beneficial, not only for myself, for my personal training, but also again working side by side with certain law enforcement members. So I really like them, and they've got a couple more things coming down the pipeline that I can't exactly share. But you can also look at their laser ammo. It's a fun little birdcage flash hider that shoots and emits out a laser with a couple interactive targets. So I'm hoping to get my hands on that soon for my own personal use. But we're here to talk about the F90. Now this video on the F90, I would probably describe it more as a very in-depth overview rather than a review. I have spent quite a bit of time on this F90 in particular, as well as spent my time in and around other gas blowback models, not only from KWA, but from other manufacturers as well. My go-to is always the KWAs. I think for the bang for the buck, you're gonna get the best overall consistency of build quality as well as the best balance of performance at the cost. You can certainly get cheaper gas blowbacks and you can spend a little bit more money in order to put some upgrade parts into them. Notice how I put those in quotations because I've had a couple of experiences, not myself, but with other friends of the channel. You could also spend a lot of money maybe on another brand, maybe twice as much as one of these are going for, this F90, and you're still having to put a lot of parts into it just due to the name brand inherently. There's really nothing wrong with that. I have my preferences just because, again, I think they're sitting right in the middle. You spend a little bit of money, you get really good performance out of the box, and I don't feel like I need to allocate any further funds into replacement parts. I've got a couple of cosmetic parts that I put onto it, but really nothing that I've put into it, and I'm getting excellent performance. Okay. Now for all of my diehard Australians out there, you actually know that the F90 is not the Australian service defense weapon, it's actually the EF88. The F90 is actually the export variant of the EF88 for other countries to have that essentially externally from what information I've gathered is a one-to-one to the EF88. The F90 is something that can be produced outside of Australia, so KWA has the F90 license rather than the EF88. I think if you were to do an exact clone of an Australian Defence Force clone kit, I think that the F90 would have no issues at all fitting aesthetically as well as functionality what the Australians are utilizing. And I've added a couple of my accessories as a weird little hybrid mix of what the Australian Defence Force is utilizing on their F90s, as well as what I would like cosmetically on my variant here. So on the F90, we have two separate components. We have the upper receiver, which is our all metal monolithic upper receiver that is paired with a 20-inch barrel. Again, those 20 inches are resided inside of the body. The body or the lower receiver is going to be all polymer except for the trigger assembly that sits in the back here. Now there's a lot of history evolving around the F90, the EF88, and a lot of its other predecessors. And I'm going to be doing another in-depth video around the history of the F90, the Australian service weapons throughout the years. So it's actually been very difficult to do any type of research around the F90 in order to give you guys some context as to what this is and why it is. So hopefully I'll have something out soon that is going to shed a little bit more light compared to literally every other video on YouTube that I have seen about the F90 or even the EF88. So that's going to be coming down the pipeline on my end as well. Need to light a fire under my butt for all of that. Now, in airsoft, why would you maybe want to get something like this? A gas blowback and a bullpup all in one configuration. Why would you not want to get maybe a battery-powered bullpup or maybe something more standard like an AR system? Like, but not exclusively, this model that I have here. And I actually have this for a couple of demonstration comparisons because the AR is so popular, not only amongst airsoft, but amongst the real world as well, not only for civilian, but also military applications as well. So this is an awesome baseline that everyone understands, can comprehend as a comparison to the F90. Now the F90 that I have here, I need to give you a warning. What's really cool is that the serial number that we have associated with this is serial number 3. So this is not one of the newest productions of the F90. So from the perspective of what I've been able to get out of this, we have to go at it with the context of this is kind of an earlier model. Maybe not everything has been finalized and complete on it, but it scratches a lot of the things that I would be looking for a new airsoft replica to add to my collection. So of course in airsoft, not everyone is concerned about how well it operates and what it does historically. They just want to know how it shoots. So lucky enough, we're going to go out to the field and we're going to look at see how it performs. So quite honestly, this is going to be my 4th time attempting to do this test. I wanted to give you guys as perfect as conditions as possible, and pretty much every time I came out to try to do some of the testing, wind would just pick up, crazy crosswinds, just nothing worked well. So this is the time where I gave us as big of a target as I could get us, right? Because part of the original testing when comparing the F90 to the Q10 was some crazy crosswinds. So I said that I would come back, and I'm upholding that promise of better conditions where we could do that F90 testing. Again, because I was told in a review video with the F90 that it can go up to 300 feet and consistently.
It's pretty crazy how far this thing can shoot just out of the box, you know, just because it's a gas blower rifle and how long this inner barrel is. I mean, hold on, I have a few more shots here. Yeah, I mean, if you take nice and controlled shots, you could probably, I don't want to say effectively, but you could get out there to 300 feet right out of the box.
Which anyone who has been in airsoft long enough knows that's a pretty bold statement. I'm not saying that airsoft can't go 300 feet, but for something directly out of the box as a gas blowback, it's kind of crazy. So I wanted to put that to the test, and with our previous testing, if you want to watch that video, it's going to be up on the right side there. With our previous testing, it was not optimal conditions, admittedly. So I wanted to come out on a different day and show how it does and what it can do. And with the zoom camera, I didn't want it to be like, oh, here's this target, this man-sized target at 200, 250, and 300 feet, and looking through the zoom camera and like best guessing where the BBs are going. I wanted to like have an actual trackable like impact system. So here with my wingspan, just a little bit more than 5 feet. I'm 6 foot on the dot, pretty much on the nose, if you guys want to know. Your wingspan is essentially your height, give or take half of an inch or to an inch. So nearly 6 feet. And as far as overall height, just past the top of my head, just below my knees. So I think a good size target for what we're attempting to do. So we'll do 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, and 300 and further if we can handle it. We're gonna be utilizing 3 2s, and we just did our Joule test, so we're 2 joules almost on the nose. So let's do some testing. Current Joule test. Helps if I have the magazine, you know? All right, BB in the chamber. Magazine in. Let's do an up and over. And you can probably hear a little bit of wind coming in. Take a knee here, I'm gonna be a little wet. And we just go for Bob's face here. Or better yet, whatever patch he's got that's cringe on his plate carrier. All right, 5 shots. We have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like with previous videos. 1, 2. Right, because that's 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. We need one more. Okay, thank you. We'll just do an octagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 right there. Maybe I should have had a different colored Sharpie. So that is our 50 foot. Gonna be aiming for his cringe patch again. Oh my goodness, low. Okay, that was our 5 shots. Okay, what were we, triangles? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, it clearly seems that we've got some droppage right here, so I'm going to take a minute to, 1, move my vehicle even further, and 2, double check my hop up. It shouldn't have changed at all, but we're going to double check it. Yeah, so this is our inner barrel. Believe it or not, that is the length of the inner barrel that the F90 has. Kind of crazy, I think. Now, as far as the hop up is concerned, this dial does seem a little loose. As far as I can tell, the wheel is still working correctly, as in like it's still applying pressure when I am turning the wheel to apply pressure, but the actual knob, it has a little detent sitting right here that applies pressure upwards. I wonder if that just got loose, or I haven't turned this enough to wear it in at all. So one thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to go most of the way. I'm not going to turn it all the way up. I'm gonna turn it most of the way. Okay, so one thing I gotta say, compared to like LM4s or other gas blowbacks, getting your hop-up unit out in order to like inspect and double check everything is working, from a gas blowback perspective, this is one of the quickest ones that I have seen. It still has a detent, a bolt that locks it into the inner barrel, but compared to like the LM4, where I need to remove the outer barrel to get access to, or I need to remove my rail to get access to the bolt to get the inner barrel out, this is so much faster. This is so much easier. Just like sit in the parking lot, quick do a little bit of inspection just to make sure it's working correct. Okay, we're gonna give that a try. So you can see my hop-up window has a little bit of tape right there. So as I slide this in, pull that body pin out. So this is my ejection port right here. I pull this forward just enough if I want to adjust my hop-up. Pull the upper far enough forward to where I can get access in this first notch right here, can adjust my hop-up, and then close this all the way, lock that body pin, and then we're get back and good to go. Magazine in. Okay, let's just quick redo this 100. All right, this one might be a little rough. We've got some wind against us. Aiming for his dumb face. Okay. Let's go check out them results. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 down here. So we had that first big group, and then here's our 4. So our 4 is pretty okay, but we had this mystery drop down here, which could have been wind, could have been the hop up again, but let's kick this out to 150. So this is the frustrating part about living here, is literally an hour ago there was no wind. Like the tops of the trees there moving in the wind, like wind through the grass, nothing. It was still. It was perfect. But now there's wind and that upsets me. So while it's died down, 150. Okay, pretty sure I counted 5. I may have counted 6 by mistake, but I heard 2 misses. Okay, so I was aiming for our cringe patch. Oh my gosh, does this ever get bright for you guys? Okay, so 150 is circle. So here's what's crazy. Circle, circle, circle. I'm looking at the rest of his body as well. Looking at the other sides of the papers, and I don't see anything. So from here to here, I would call that 3 feet, maybe just shy of 3 feet. Now it could also be that it's working itself high, it's working itself low. Like as we're shooting it, the tape could start to become undone. So this is just as temporary of a fix as I could get it. And now we're gonna hop out here to 200. Let's see if we can do some magic at 200. I was promised 300 from Airsoft GI. I wanna see it get done. That might have dropped just shy of the paper. Empty magazine. Let's refill. All right, if you guys watched the previous video, you guys know that the F90 was able to do about just shy of 200 with 0.40s. So we're using 3.2s. 3.2s is a good, like middle of the road BB. I think 4.0s could probably do a better job cutting against this headwind. And at 200, I still had to give it a lot of height to get it to hit. So that's what I think we're gonna do here. Kind of wait for the wind to die down just a little bit. Okay. Boom. Whoa, way right. Wait for that to die down. Way right. I'm gonna send one more, just because now I know where the BBs are going. I think just shy. You know what? It's possible. It's possible. I'm gonna send a couple more. That one fell just short. That was like perfect. We had like a little patch where there was no wind. Sent 4 BBs, and several of them were able to land. All right, let's take a look at that. All right, 200. I sent just over 10 BBs. So I'm looking at the target. So the fact that we sent that many and we got 5, I'll have like an actual number as far as how many BBs I actually fired at it at that distance, but I think we were a little bit more consistent compared with the previous video that we did, which had that crazy left to right wind. And I think the ambient temperature was around 45 degrees. Today, right now, we're sitting at around 70 degrees. So plenty of warmth for gas to work well and act well. We're getting good performance today. Now is 250. This one is where I'm a little bit more apprehensive. So I had to send it right around there. I'd probably say another, knowing that that piece of paper is 5 feet tall, probably say 7 feet is where I was aiming. Waiting for that windsock to die down. Way low. Oh, that might have hit.
way to the right, to the right. That dropped down crazy amounts. Wind's coming back. And we're out. Okay, well, there was one BB that looked really good, but I don't see any impacts here. So let's keep trying. I mean, they just started flying relatively straight, so I was just sending BBs and just seeing where they're gonna land. There is one last thing for me to do, and I'm just gonna grab another rifle and I'm just gonna compare it as far as the different distances and how well those BB impacts work. From like the standpoint of a gas blowback compared to an AEG that should be shooting, I mean, this is, the F90 is shooting 2 joules with 3 2s. I mean, that's cooking it as far as gas blowbacks go. I don't know any fields in the US that would allow 2 O's or 2 joules for like any roll. All right, for my comparison bit, I have here a brand new Avalon series rifle. This is the SOT-mod model, and yeah, essentially brand new out of the box. Bouncing between 1.39 and 1.42 joules with 0.28. Seems my hop up might be a bit on the high side. Our 100. And no optic, just irons. Kind of a big group. What was our distance here? 100 feet. There's that group, 100 feet. That group, kind of same. 150. One, 2. Okay, well, if those are 2, let me go back to that same spot. Okay, here's what it is. So they are impacting, but not enough to break through it. So I saw 1, 2, 3. So that little dent that I saw here, so that was the SOT-mod M4 that I have here. So further testimony that lighter weight BBs don't have enough oomph in order to break through at 200 feet. So they're leaving just small indents on the paper. And right here. So 2/8 from an AEG can hit, but they're one, not breaking paper, and 2, they're not any more consistent compared to the F90. Let me just try 250. And how about this? I'm gonna grab one of my extra microphones. I'm gonna put it on the paper, and we'll see if we can hear any of the BB impacts. No new dents, no new holes. Oh, we got a dent right there. That also might have been an old one.
Now I want to give you guys some further context. If you guys look at the Guinness World Record, and this is kind of a challenge as well, if you look at the Guinness World Record for longest airsoft shot, it is 266 feet. And you're already thinking, Talon, I've way shot past that easily. And that's true. I have also had a couple of shots that exceed that 266 feet. It's not very consistent, and it's a shot in the dark. But Swamp Sniper has done a very long distance shooting video, and he's way broken that 266 feet. The limitation that they have is 1 joule velocity, or kinetic energy that replica is shooting. And they're shooting at a 2 foot by 2 foot target at that distance. So part of my challenge is, if you're looking at the footage that I provided of my distance testing, I would like you to try your best to beat the Guinness World Records and really look and see how really difficult or how easy it is to try to hit that consistently. And again, with a 1 joule regulation at a 2 foot by 2 foot target at those distances, it's way not easy. And anyone that has been within airsoft long enough and know the limitations of these replicas, they would probably agree 300 feet that was advertised might be a little bit of an exaggeration. Another point in perspective, because again, not a whole lot of people have made videos on the F90, if you go and watch Jet the Desert Fox's video, his gameplay specifically, you will see that some of his BBs are dropping in his zoom camera. Now that, I need to tell you guys, is from the camera specifically. I'm assuming Jet does this, right? But from my point of view, a lot of times I will take my camera or my phone, I will Bluetooth it to my run cam, my zoom camera, and I'm looking and I'm testing and seeing where that focus point is. So for these testings, I intentionally put that zoom or that point of focus farther away. So we actually don't see the BB until it's most of the way to the target. Are you gonna stay? So from a accuracy, consistency point of view, I'm not all too surprised. Now, it did take me a lot longer in order to do that accuracy and consistency testing because of a few reasons. One, here in Wisconsin, we actually have very shitty weather to where it's either snowing, raining, or it's just blowing all hell. And those are just not good variables for testing not only a gas blowback, but testing a gas blowback at distance. In fact, I'm going to have some cold weather testing that I'm going to show a little bit later to help kind of prove and formulate that gas blowbacks within a colder environment just don't work all that well. This is designed and intended to be a warmer climate replica in order to use. All right, so I have here the KWA Litho F90. We're going to be shooting 0.20s out of it first. Now I do need to say that the ambient temperature right now with the magazine in my pocket, but since we have our garage door open, currently is around 38 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're probably going to see a little bit of performance drop, but you know, we got to do with what we got to do. So we got 2 O's in here. Going to try to get some chronograph readings. Let's just let's make sure we're all set here. All right, get started. 358, 366, 364, 344, 352, 340, 345, 358, 346, and then 355. So our average between all of those is somewhere around here. Little over 1 joule. So and
those were 5 shots. Let's go take a look at that. So what I noticed was those BBs were starting to drop pretty quickly, but we have our 5 impacts. All right, let's try here 100 feet. Hit. To the right, or to the left, excuse me. To the left. I'm gonna try to recenter this. Hit. 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 Under. To the left. All right, this is shitty fucking testing.
So by far, this is a warmer climate type of setup, a very warm climate rifle that it prefers, but it also is shooting way too hot to be fieldable in those warmer environments. So that could be an issue with this model in particular, this early serial number model. Jet the Desert Fox did do some gameplay, and I can link his video up in the corner. He had no problem. I'm not sure if his was maybe the indoor field one or what he was able to do with it, but I was not able to get any gameplay with this one in particular. I tried on several occasions. Now, from the perspective of long distance shooting, I kind of already knew and expected that it wasn't going to do all that well at those longer distances, hence warming my way up to that 250 feet, and then that's where the break line is. We're going to do more extensive testing within this 50 to 250 limit. And if you watch Jet Desert Fox's video, he also had a zoom camera on the very front here in order to look out. Now I want to point out that because of the height of the top rail, that monolithic upper rail compared to the barrel, it's not perfectly in line. So what you're actually seeing with those zoom cameras, I'm going to defend Jet on this one, it looks like that the BB is dropping very quickly. You don't actually see that BB rise that you would want on a normal hop up. And that's because the distance from our upper rail system to our barrel is, there's so much height here that we actually miss the rise of that BB, and we only really get to see the drop portion of it. And I'm assuming Jet does a similar thing to what I do by practice. I try to get my zoom camera set to the distances I'm gonna be shooting at so that the focus is at the distance I'm gonna be impacting people. So you're not even seeing the BB leave the barrel, but the portion of the BB to that distance where it finally does meet the line of this upper rail system. It's out of focus and then comes into focus as that BB is dropping. That is what you're seeing not only on my footage with the zoom camera, but also on Jet's footage as well. So if you guys are maybe thinking about that and being really critical, that is what is happening there. So even though I was not able to get my hands dirty with gameplay, I was able to spend a lot of time internally and externally really working, manipulating, and figuring out some of the weirder quirks with the F90. Again, something that hasn't been brought to the table as far as videos reviewing or overviewing this product, let alone even talked about. But before we get to maybe some of those quirks, I do want to talk about all the great things that I love about this F90. The fact that on the market we have very few rifles that are designed as gas blowbacks. I mean, we have our standards from GHK, from Tokyo Marui, from WE, from how many other manufacturers, but they're almost always going to be an M4 or AR pattern rifle system. There's not a lot of people that are working on a bullpup configured. Now, KWA actually has two. They do have the IWI as well as this F90 here. So they have a Tavor, and there's a couple of bullpup conversion kits for not only their KMP9, but I'm also wanting to do one on one of their gas blowback M4s, getting another one and doing a bullpup conversion kit just because from SKU, I always thought that looked a little bit cool. But not a whole lot of people are doing this specifically. So I've always liked KWA for that, being very innovative, kind of something that is very different from a lot of other people, and kind of being forward with some of those newer products coming to the market. And they're not the only ones. There are a couple other brands that are doing that as well. And KWA also produces a lot of AR patterns, but It is so warming to see all of these new, unique replicas come to market, especially something that has seen not only real service life, but also has a very long-standing history within the real world and conflicts within the real world. Just because kind of that military history kind of niche, very unique, very interesting. Now with these videos that I do, they are a little bit longer, but I also like to go over great detail what it is we're picking out, what it is we're looking at, because before I make that heavy investment, I want to know exactly everything about it. So I try to be very honest, very open, very transparent with everything that is this and other things that I review. So the KWA F90 does not come with the cool magnified optic, does not come with the vertical grip, nor does it come with the sling, nor the Magpul sling point on the very back here. You would get just the bare bones rifle with the magazine and with the instruction manual in the box, and there's no problem with that. What I've discovered is with the very tip here, this is actually a two-piece flash hider. So we have here this very traditional, maybe not traditional, but very AUG pattern type of flash hider that's very long, and we have a larger nut down here that does reveal a lot of length to our 14 counterclockwise threads that are underneath here. Now, I do not know a lot of mock suppressors or even tracer units that would sit anything that entire length of thread. So I think, unfortunately, aesthetically, you'll probably need to sit with your nut like so, and probably add whatever tracer unit or mock suppressor to the very end of that. But the fact that it's easy to get off and you can do it by hand is very refreshing to a lot of other people. I will say you have to get kind of the right size of tracer unit or mock suppressor. I think stuff that is maybe a little bit larger, like my Sandman K, that I did not bring in here for some reason, actually looks pretty good on the very end of here. I got a tracer unit video coming out that's gonna look awesome. The F90 or the EF88 was designed and implemented with fluted outer barrel, so very fun that they implemented that. And if you're asking, what is the difference between maybe an F90 EF88 or even an AUG platform? One of the big things is the fact that it does have a bayonet lug up here. That is something the Australian Defence Force did ask when they first introduced the F88. If you look on the other side here, the EF88 and the F90 also featured a bolt release on the very back here. And one of the very first iterations of the F88, the earliest model that the Australian Defence Force got, is a lockout tab here. So this helps keep it either in semi with the half squeeze, or you can kick that up and pull the trigger all the way for full auto. So that was something the Australians asked for, the bayonet lug, the lockout tab. Once we got to 2012, if my memory serves me correctly, that's when the Australians went with the bolt release on the side here, which the Australians did before we could see it on the AUG A3. So Australians very forward with that production. So remember how I said the F90 is a two-piece configuration? The AUG platform that this is derived from is actually the easiest to take apart and disassemble. We have our upper receiver and our lower receiver. Take note that our receiver release tab on the side here is actually self-contained. Anyone that's worked on an AUG knows that that son of a bitch can actually slide out super easily. So the fact that it is contained, it only goes one way, but the fact that it is contained is a lifesaver. We all know about that little bracket, that little metal bracket that can fall out. Pain in my ass. Our spring guides, which is a dual rod right here. And then we have our upper receiver. How easy is that? Like I said, one of the easiest ones to disassemble. No extra pins we gotta take care of. Really, no parts components. If we want to take absolutely everything out, we have our upper receiver, guide rods, magazine, lower receiver. So easy. Now what's going to make this a little bit trickier is going through everything. With our upper receiver, like I said, we had that 20-inch barrel. Going backwards on the very top there, we do have our serial number 3. Very cool. We do have a gas adjuster. It is fake, doesn't do anything for airsoft. We have monolithic rails on the 12, 9, and 6 o'clock position. Nothing here on the left-hand side. They've left that open for our charging handles, which, as long as we had our guide rods in, would actually operate it and work well. What is awesome is that the charging handle with the EF88 was designed and implemented to fold up. Previous models did have, within the real world specifically, did have this charging handle stay in one fixed position. Since it folds up, it actually can cut down the profile of the entire rifle to be really slim, and it's against the body of a lot of these soldiers or us airsofters, so it did cut down on any type of snags or grabbing of the gear when we're walking around with it. So we can pull that back, lock it up as long as there's spring tension, lock it forward and up. You can charge and operate your bolt. Well, you can only operate your bolt like this by charging it backwards and then back forward. So that's you actuating the entire mechanism internally. After that, as long as you've got the system working, you can use either the charging handle to let that bolt forward with a new magazine, or you can hit that bolt release on the side. That makes it super, super easy, and I'll talk about in a second. Monolithic upper receiver that runs the entire length, very high, but it does allow for us to shoot in a very upright position. For airsoft, it's super, super comfortable. I really, really like that a lot. I was a little scared that with our Unity high rise for our LPVO, that it would actually technically be maybe a little too much, but it actually ended up being right on the money. Now, if you're looking for this Unity high rise for the LPVO, that does have the option for a 45-degree throw. I did pick this up from Paladin Airsoft down in the Milwaukee area. You can check him out as well. The Australian military does get a lot of Magpul products, interestingly enough. So one of their products is going to be this sling retention, which sits almost above the trigger in a 2-point configuration. Now, I opted for my sling point to go up here, which does swivel and move around. And I did order an actual Magpul sling. This is not a knockoff from Temu or Wish or whatever. This is an actual Magpul sling. The sling points are polymer, so I could have put it on the very end here and it wouldn't have scratched anything. Aesthetically, I wanted to keep it as clean as possible. So I just added this band, this paracord extension. It was actually pretty easy because every time I took my sling on and off, it would start to wrap up a little bit, but it would keep my sling in line how I liked it. So it actually worked out pretty well. My only complaint is that the bottom rail system does not offer a lot of real estate when it comes to adding different types of accessories. You could, because we currently don't have a grenade launcher attachment designed for the F90, you could technically put one of the rail mounted ones down here if you wanted that aesthetic or that look. Famously, with the EF88 and the F90, the very front tab here that does get advertised a lot does open up, and that's going to allow for the grenade launcher trigger to sit inside of your scabbard or saber grip. I'm pretty sure it's scabbard grip, but that's what this guy is. Now, two things to continue in line with our upper receiver. I'm almost done just on the upper. From KWA, from the KWA Gas Blowback specifically, or really any other gas blowbacks, having an LM4 and that of a very worn LM4, the access to the hop-up unit is a pain in the dick, all right? This F90, and I can't say for other brands of gas blowbacks, but this is actually the easiest to get access to my hop-up unit. So if maybe I'm having hop-up issues and I want to quick diagnose any type of rips in my bucking or just clean it out, it's super easy to get out. Now, you'll notice that the inner barrel length reaches a little over halfway of the 20-inch barrel. Now, in conversation with KWA, they did this for a couple of reasons. They wanted to prioritize on the inside of the nozzle. So this guy right here, this being our nozzle and our spring guide rods, they wanted to keep this the outdoor nozzle, the jet nozzle specifically, which took it above 400 when you had the full 20-inch inner barrel. What they did is they started to cut that inner barrel length down until they got exactly 400 feet per second with a .20. Now us here in the States, 400 FPS is kind of a outdoor limit when it comes to battery powered systems. Now that we have a lot more information about kinetic energy and the amount of impact some of these heavier weight BBs can have when we have an excess amount of airflow from HPA or from gas blowbacks, we know that those heavier weight BBs have a lot more oomph behind them. And that is one of the negative drawbacks to this design in particular, or even maybe just this rifle specifically, because again, with the .32, I was hitting 2 joules, but when I measured with .20s, I was just over 400 feet per second. Gave it a couple of shots and it got right to that 400 feet per second. So as long as your field is still doing FPS, this is still fieldable. In my case, they're very good about doing joules for gas blowback and HPA, so I was unable to get this to field legal. Now my 2 cents are, I would really like to know. One, I would really like to know what the velocity is when we had the full 20-inch inner barrel. When it comes to the concept and design of the bullpup, you really want to capitalize on all of that inner barrel length that you are hiding so you have the most amount of efficiency that is propelling that BB out of the inner barrel. So when we're intentionally introducing a longer length outer barrel, but we're not capitalizing on the inner barrel length, I kind of would have rather gone with a design that was specifically the shorter barrel length and keep it kind of at that. So something I would like to see explored is starting with the nozzle. Now our nozzle system is pretty good. I take that back, it's great. When we look at a gas blowback replica, our nozzle sticking in with our hop-up unit is a really good sign. That's what you want from a gas blowback nozzle, is you want it to stay inside of the hop-up unit as long as possible before it disconnects in order to reset the trigger assembly and pick up the next BB. What that does is that's going to give as much air behind the BB as it travels through the inner barrel. Now, the more length to our inner barrel, the more consistency that we're going to have to that BB fly path, as well as give it the most amount of ass behind it with the most amount of air. So that stickiness of that nozzle is from the factory. That's nothing that I've done in addition to this. So the fact that it is like that directly out of the box, really good. Really freaking good. What I would personally like to see is if we went instead of with the high velocity nozzle, and we can see if we take our guide rods out and we look through the nozzle, it looks kind of like a little triangle where it has the 3 little splits right there. The CQB variant actually is a long cylinder, just a tube. And so it's a little bit backwards from what we think from a high velocity jet nozzle valve compared to the CQB jet nozzle valve that KWA produces for their gas blowbacks. And I'm pretty sure it's the exact same from all the other nozzle valves that KWA is producing. So I have one in my KMP9, I have one in a bolt for one of my LM4s, just so I can take that gas blowback and have a high velocities bolt as well as a CQB bolt for indoors or outdoors. This, I would like to see if there was a CQB nozzle that we could put on the inside of here. How much inner barrel length can we gain and get us close to 400 feet per second? Because based on what we have seen right here, if we cut and use that, if we put that CQB nozzle valve inside of here, we should be able to get a lot more inner barrel length and still get really close to that outdoor joule limitation. So that is something I would like to see get experimented with, but by no means is it something that I have the ability to do so. So from an upper receiver component assembly, it is awesome. Everything is tight, everything is in one piece, nothing feels loose. And again, it's all metal, so it does add to the overall heft of the rifle. But it does sit completely in line with our lower assembly, our lower receiver, if you will. Now I'm gonna put this grenade launcher attachment back into place, and it should slide right in like so. Now this is all polymer, so this entire assembly is in a complete polymer assembly. We have only a few metal components, both as springs and bolts for our safety, our trigger, our bolt release, and then we have in the very back here our trigger assembly. And I'm going to show this off in a full disassembly portion of the video. You can remove the rubber butt plate that sits right here. And it is very, very grippy. We have some texture on the very back here. So when you have it not only against your shoulder, but against gear, it actually does hold really, really well. And I have no issues with slippage. From the perspective of some AUG variants that I've had from ASG, these rubber butt plates are kind of more friction held into it. This is actually pinned with the sling point, which is interchangeable. From the factory, it did come in this position. I had it in all the previous videos over on this side, so the sling wrapped around the stock and did not get in the way when I needed to shoulder it. So keep that in mind when you look at this video, or this portion of the video right here. We have here our bolt release, and we have our upper and lower disassembly bolt. We have our safety up here on the very front of the trigger guard. If you're left or right-handed, if you are left-handed, it is a little bit backwards. So we have our safe here, hit that with your thumb, and it is fire. Our trigger, like I was saying earlier, does have a lockout tab, and it is only accessible with either your fingernail if you have long nails, or with a very small tool. You can get that inside of there and pull that out. It is a little bit harder to get out. It's really easy to get in by mistake. I had this a couple of times when I first got the F90, and I was just seeing where that brake is on the trigger. So as long as we have that lockout tab there and engaged, that's going to be our semi-automatic. If we have that lockout tab disengaged out of the way, we can give it a full trigger pull and it goes into full auto. This is something that other real firearms or airsoft replicas are going to mimic and mirror, such as the AUG specifically. So a half trigger pull is going to give us fire or semi-auto, and then a full trigger pull is going to give us full auto. The Australians had some forward thought and they requested that lockout tab. So if you want to be a little more conservative with your ammunition, or in my case, I wanted to get familiar with where that trigger brake is on semi-automatic, I gained some muscle memory as to where that semi-auto trigger pull is, and then I'm able to click that tab out and go into full auto if I needed to. For airsoft, I don't feel like there's a need to go into full auto, so keep that tab out. On the conversation of keeping the tab out, however, it is super easy to accidentally hit that tab with your middle finger. And if you're trying to be really quick with your shots on semi-automatic, you could accidentally pull it a little too far and go into full auto. That's happened in testing with me personally, and with some of the testing that I've done. In the middle of that distance testing, I did accidentally, towards the end, do a full auto trigger. Just wasn't really thinking about it. What I really like is the safety. So it is a bar safety. This is kind of like my preferred. What I really like is that the bar sits right where the meat of your pointer finger is. So if I'm here on the trigger, I can simply move my pointer finger up, hit that with the meat of my finger, and then it falls naturally into place on the trigger. The safety does go in line with the meat of my thumb, so it's super easy to sit here and go back and forth like this. Our takedown tab only goes one direction. I really like that, having worked on a couple of AUG variants. Love that. No problem, no concerns whatsoever. Our bolt release, huge fan of that. Having worked on ARs, having owned several ARs, in fact, both airsoft and real steel, really like the fact that our bolt release, not only one is implemented, but right where our thumb is when we grab that magazine and we slide it up. So if we need to hit that bolt release, it's right in line there. It's super, super easy. The only point of concern for people that are unfamiliar with the F90 or with certain AUG variants, the magazine release is this button back here. When I've shown this off to a couple of friends, they've kind of mistakenly hit this as the magazine release, this as the magazine release. They don't really realize that the magazine release is back here. And of the few that do realize where it is, they've taken the meat of their thumb and they've pressed it up against the actual body of the lower receiver, but that's not enough in order to release the magazine. So you need to take the very tip of your thumb, jam it up into the receiver, and pull your magazine out. That's gonna be the best way in order to get your magazine removed in a hurry, which I actually prefer. The last thing that I want to point out is with the trigger assembly, I did have this happen to me once. If you want to take the trigger assembly out, you don't need to, but I want you to actuate the charging handle. That way that hammer is all the way cocked backwards. Once you have that charging handle pulled backwards, remove your magazine, remove the upper receiver, take your rubber butt pad off, take your sling point out, and that's going to give you the access in order to pull your trigger assembly out. When you put that back, do not put your rifle like this or cant it a little bit downwards. Keep it in an upright position when you go and slide it in. It is going to feel a little bit weird having it up in this orientation, but on the trigger assembly there is a tab that does jut out from the front of that assembly. And on the inside of the receiver right here, there is like a crescent moon clip that does actuate and work with the bolt release. So you need to make sure that that tab lines in with that crescent there. I had it once where I might have been grabbing that bolt release by mistake, but that crescent moon was pulled and up out of the way from that tab, and it literally rested right on top of it. So every time I went and put a fresh magazine in, hit the bolt release, it actually didn't fire and it didn't lock back. So that is my mistake for you guys to learn. As far as operation and mechanics of the F90, it's super, super easy. Now in research of this, that historical research of the F90 and the Australian Defence Force's application of it, a lot of soldiers reported and stated about how it was a little bit of a learning curve. It wasn't nearly as simple as the L1A1s that they've had previously as their service weapon, but given the fact that it was an intermediate cartridge, a 5.56 coming out of a softer recoiling system like this that we have here, they did actually have better shooting results when talking about the real firearm, that they actually had to change the marksman standardization test when it came transitioning from the L1A1 to the F88, one of the predecessors of the F90 that we have here. So as far as handling, movements, mechanics, it's actually really simple, very comfortable. Now granted, I've come from a position of spending a lot of time with the AR systems and then spending a lot of time with other airsoft replicas when I've done review videos as well as kind of just playing with other people's kits and seeing what they like. Now I've always kind of liked the bullpup design because of how unique it is compared to everyone else. Kind of wanted to stand out maybe just a little bit, but there's something that the M4s have that this kind of lacks, and that is going to be the overall weight. The F90 that we have here does come a little over 10 pounds, including the magazine. Comparing that to this rifle that I have here that is also tricked out with all the accessories is just over 6 pounds without the magazine. Now it's a polymer magazine, so it does not add that much weight. And over a long period of time of airsoft milsim, 6.5 pounds is a little bit easier to deal with compared to the 10.5 pounds. My God, that just got really loud. Now, if anyone wants to go maybe to one of their retailers, one of their local airsoft stores and try one of these out for themselves, if they have one on display, you'll pick it up and you realize it doesn't feel that heavy. Now, in design of the new F90 and the EF88, they actually changed where the center of gravity is, and it's controlled and positioned directly over the pistol grip. So our center of gravity is easier to control on one hand, and when we put it into our shoulder and we grab it two hands, it's very easy and smooth to operate and maneuver with. Compared to the design of an M4, a lot of that center of weight is actually concentrated more towards the front here, right where the upper receiver meets with the handguard, depending on how yours is set up. On my rifle, that's where a lot of that weight is. So it sits forward of the pistol grip, and so over a long period of time, even 6.5 pounds in an upright position like this can start to weigh on you. The other thing, as far as a mechanic design working as a comparison, is the length of pull from the buttstock to the grip here. Now, I personally prefer to have my stock on the second or third position. A lot of people might not agree with that, but you know what? Everyone has their own personal taste. If you want to have it all the way in, have it all the way in. If you want to have it all the way out, have it all the way out. I don't give a shit, but just don't tell me I'm doing it wrong. Now, from a length of pull, my bicep and my grip right here from my primary hand is very harsh. It's very angled. So standing upright like so, I have a lot of bend in my forearm here. And over a long period of time, when trying to work with my support hand in this position, it's gonna start to grow on me, and then I'm gonna have to start to shift my position, and then it's gonna start to become a little bit more like this, just because over a long day of milsim, that really starts to cook the shoulders. And now I'm not trying to brag or nothing, but I do hit the gym pretty regularly. But after a long day of milsim, and I mean like, once it gets to almost 12 hours of milsimming, that starts to become really freaking hard to do. When we take that and compare it to the F90 that we have here, first, look at my length of pull. It's actually longer compared to the AR, the Mark 18 that I have here with the stock all the way pulled out. So my angle of my forearm to my bicep is actually softer. It's not nearly as harsh, so it's a little bit easier on the overall arm. If I needed to grab it like this, naturally my hand fits, for me personally, it fits right where that grip is, so I can use my short vertical grip as a hand step, and see I get into contact. That's right where my pistol grip actually is. So let's actually compare my pistol grip orientation. From all the way in, they're almost identical. And I didn't even mean to do that. I just grabbed the F90, I put one of my spare grips right where I thought it would be comfortable, and it happens to line up almost exactly where my Mark 18 is. A little fun, little coincidence, I'm also gonna point out that length of pull. And we're gonna compare that length of pull from the end of the buffer tube, or end of the buttstock, to that trigger there. Put those magazines off to the side. So we have our F90, and then we have, I'm gonna pull it trigger to trigger. So trigger to trigger, and the F90 buttstock extends past the Mark 18 stock by still quite a bit, which is not super awesome. Now, let's look and compare the overall barrel length. So I'm gonna go from where the barrel starts on the F90 compared to the Mark 18 that I have here. So you'll have to excuse the flashlight that I have attached to here, but the end of the barrel sits right here on my Mark 18. The outer barrel on the F90 sits right about here. And we have here a 11.5-inch outer barrel compared to a 20-inch outer barrel, not including the muzzle device that just brings it to about 23 inches. So because of that bullpup design, it actually holds and hides that longer barrel very, very, very well. From the point and perspective of magazines, the magazines on the gas blowbacks are very, very, very heavy. This is actually my second magazine for the F90, and these are polymer EPM Gen 3s. These are just under or over 1/4 pound. These are, I had it written in my notes. So these are 2 1/4 pounds. So you need several of these magazines to just get to the weight of one of these magazines. So that is a little unfair. Now, we gotta also consider that this F90 was produced and built under the guise and perspective of this is a training replica. So this is designed to be a one-to-one with what the Australian Defence Force is utilizing, and thus the magazines should equal the same as a full battle load, all 30 rounds. And speaking of the magazines, they also only hold 30 rounds compared to LM4s or other gas blowbacks, which are typically 40 to 50 rounds, unless you have like an LMG, and then you can have 70 to 80 rounds for a little PDW magazine. These only hold 30 rounds. In my thought process, right, going through kind of the limitations of what this F90 has as a design, if we were to really capitalize on that longer length of inner barrel, right, we could potentially utilize this as a intermediate cartridge DMR, right, where we could have a lot of efficiency behind that BB. Granted, we can only go so far and we can only make a BB so accurate, but if we were to put 0.40s, right, and this shot 0.40s really, really, really well, even with a pretty drastic left to right wind in one of my previous videos of testing, it still performed pretty okay, even in 45-degree temperatures with only 30 rounds. So it was able to do really, really, really well in that environment. I don't know of many other replicas that I would go with that would be able to handle those circumstances as well as this one did. So if we were able to maximize that inner barrel in that heavy crosswind, in that colder temperature, I guarantee that we would have a lot more hits on a smaller target more consistently than really anything else. So this has a lot of benefits going forward, going for it, that I think could get capitalized on it. Now, what are my final thoughts about the F90 in particular? I think I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. If you divide that further, that's a 4 out of 5. That's a passing grade. Despite some of its limitations, especially one of the biggest ones I have on this model, and that is the Joules issue, I think that I could 100% figure out how to get this to outdoor legal and potentially even indoor legal. And that I would this would make it a completely well-rounded, super efficient, just monster on the battlefield. I guarantee it. Now, I don't know the solution that Jet Desert Fox had in order to get his F90 to field legal. That's going to be something that you might have to look into with his video, again, linked up there in the corner. I'm very confident I could get this one to work. And overall, I love the fact that it is as short as it is. I really feel like I could maximize the amount of inner barrel length and consistency. I really thought that at the distances I could go, right, we were still getting very consistent hits on paper, and we got to a point where we just lost it entirely. Now, I completely blame the inner barrel. Over those distances, those impacts on paper started to spread out farther and farther and farther. And that's just due to how inner barrels are going to work. And especially inner barrels that are maybe a little bit lighter weight, especially what this is shooting at, 2 joules. 3 2s are still even way too light of a BB with that amount of energy behind it. So we're talking 4 5s or 5 0s. Come on, battery, quit f***ing up. I loved the handling of this system. It gave you a couple options in order to work the magazine and work the basic function of the rifle without specifically limiting you to either the AUG style of charging handle or having like an AR style of charging handle. You can do kind of a hybrid mix of both, and it made everything really smooth in my opinion and my mechanic workflow. And again, that's coming from a background of a lot of AR usage. I especially appreciated the history behind the F90, the EF88, and really doing a super autistic deep dive on how this came to be, and really, and just seeing how close Australia was to getting the M16 as a service weapon over the AUG variant that we have here. So that has been a lot of fun. Now, before I leave you guys, I'm sure you AUG guys already thought that this is maybe a really paid video with KWA, some type of collaboration. KWA has not paid me anything. I still need to send back these replicas to KWA. I'm not in a position where I just get stuff from companies for long-term review. I wish that would be the case, but that is not the case. And again, KWA has been very, very, very gracious with allowing me to hold on to these as long as I have. Partially to blame is going to be the winter. and kind of the shit weather we've had thus far, having snowstorms in mid-April, as well as the amount of winds and high winds that we've had in the Wisconsin area, and me just overall being busy in my new role and position as a job, having 16-hour days for production makes for a very long week, and the fact that everyone else is free on the weekend for produced content means that I need to be available in order to do work. So that makes my weekdays long and my weekends really short, and that makes it very difficult to do any type of content, period. Any content, period. So before I let you guys go, I want to talk to you guys about a program that KWA is doing in collaboration with all of these new replicas. Again, it's going to sound like I'm paid, but I'm not, because this is really important for me as a player. In today's economy, in today's market, it is more important than ever that you are going to get your money's worth out of your airsoft replica. This is your hobby. It is an investment. I personally am not getting paid nearly enough to just dump money down the drain for something that's not going to make me money, something that's just going to bring me enjoyment. So from KWA, all your new replicas are going to come with stickers. It's going to come with a thank you for your purchase. If you need any type of repair or parts, you've got that green sticker there in order to call or contact KWA. They 100% are really good with working with all their customers, even before working at the airsoft headquarters. Getting an older KWA secondhand and trying to get parts was actually super, super easy. So I really appreciate them. KWA is introducing their extended warranty and protection program. It allows you to get an extension on the warranty. So out of the box, you are going to get a 90-day warranty, and that is actually the pink slip that we have here. So it goes over all the limitations and all of the exceptions if something does happen with your replica from KWA. Are you covered? Are you not? This extended program gives you the option of a 1-year or a 2-year extension on your purchase. And of course, you have the manual. So the manual also features pictures. I want to quick point out, because these are all produced in collaboration with the Australian Defence Force, all of their pictures are going to feature blue colored magazine or parts components on their replicas. That is specifically the models KWA is producing for the Australian Defence Force. Those are not going to be the colors available either on the market or on your F90. So if you're wondering why this is blue on certain parts and yours isn't, that is why. So that is what we have. If you guys have any further questions, put them down into the comment section below. I'd be happy to answer any and all of your questions that you guys might have on the F90 or on KWA specifically. I've spent a lot of time around all of their replicas, testing a whole bunch. I'm going to put a little asterisk right there. On the US market specifically, there's a bunch of things over in the Asian and European market specifically that I would love to get my hands on and get and just add to my collection. Like a gas blowback MP5. I would love a gas blowback MP5. You know what's not available in the US, but is available over in Asia and Europe? Gas blowback MP5s. So let me know in the comments below if you would want a gas blowback MP5. But that's all I have for you guys. So you guys take care, stay safe, stay positive, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.